Doorbell camera at 412 West Lincoln Avenue captured the babysitter's arrival at 6:42 p.m. on November 19, 2021. She carried a canvas tote bag on one shoulder and waved at the camera with her free hand before pressing the doorbell, unaware that the mother whose child she was there to care for had already planned her murder. Katie Fairmont was 26 years old when she became the primary caregiver for 3-year-old Sophie Miller. The job posting had appeared on a Yakima childcare forum in August 2021, and Katie responded immediately. She'd been working at a daycare center in the Tiaden Drive area for 4 years, but the Miller family offered better pay with the chance to focus on one child instead of managing 12 toddlers simultaneously. The interview lasted 90 minutes. Clare Miller, Sophie's mother, asked Katie detailed questions about her childcare philosophy, her approach to discipline, and her availability for evening coverage. Katie had excellent references and a current CPR certification. After the interview, she was told to start the following Monday. Within 2 months, Katie became an integral part of the Miller household's routine. She arrived at the family's renovated Craftsman bungalow each weekday at 7 in the morning, stayed until Clare returned from her position as a pharmaceutical sales representative at around 6:30, and occasionally covered Friday evenings when Clare attended networking events. Little Sophie adored her. The toddler would wait by the front window each morning, pressing her palms against the glass when Katie's blue Hyundai Elantra pulled into the driveway. The Millers had installed comprehensive home security in 2020. Ring doorbells monitored both entrances, while the indoor cameras covered the living room, kitchen, and hallway outside Sophie's bedroom. The system uploaded footage continuously to cloud storage with motion-activated alerts sent directly to Clare's phone. She justified the expense as a necessary protection after a string of package thefts in the neighborhood, but the real value emerged when she could check on Sophie during client meetings. Soon she found herself reviewing footage multiple times each afternoon. By late October, Clare was watching hours of archived video each evening. She studied the way Sophie reached for Katie when she scraped her knee in the backyard, the way Sophie called out "cat" before calling for Clare, her own mother, the way Sophie's face lit up differently when Katie entered a room compared to when Clare came home. Clare told herself that she was just being unreasonable, that healthy children form attachments to consistent caregivers, that this was natural and good. She tried telling her husband, Paul, this as well. He suggested that she might benefit from talking to someone about the stress of balancing work and motherhood. Clare stopped mentioning it to Paul after that conversation and continued watching the footage. November 19th began routinely. Katie arrived at 7:14 a.m. The interior cameras showed her preparing Sophie's breakfast, reading picture books on the living room floor, and helping her build towers from wooden blocks. Clare received the standard motion alerts throughout the day but didn't review any footage until the evening. When she finally opened the app around 8 p.m., she noticed Katie had stayed later than usual. According to the timestamp data, Katie's car remained in the driveway until 7:35 p.m., though Clare had arrived home by 6:55. This deviation from routine triggered something in Clare. She scrolled through the evening footage. At 6:53 p.m., Clare had entered through the front door, visible on the doorbell camera. The interior hallway camera showed her greeting Sophie, who was playing in the living room with Katie. Normal. At 7:01 p.m., Paul arrived home from his accounting firm. Also normal. But at 7:13 p.m., Clare and Katie stood in the kitchen having what appeared to be an intense conversation. The audio was found disabled on all interior cameras. Katie's expression shifted from surprised to uncomfortable to defensive. At 7:16 p.m., Katie collected her tote bag from the mudroom bench and walked to the front door. The doorbell camera captured Katie's departure at 7:17 p.m. She walked quickly to her car, shoulders hunched against the November rain. She did not wave at the camera this time. Katie Fairmont was reported missing on November 22nd, 3 days after that recorded departure. Her roommate, Beth Park, filed the report with Yakima police after Katie failed to return home Friday night and didn't answer repeated calls or texts throughout the weekend. Katie's car was located on Sunday afternoon in the parking lot of a Fred Meyer grocery store off West Nob Hill, approximately 4 miles from the Miller residence. Her phone, wallet, and house keys were still inside, but the tote bag was missing. Detective Aaron Murphy was assigned to the case on Monday morning. He had 14 years with the Yakima police, most recently in the missing persons unit. The abandoned vehicle suggested foul play rather than voluntary disappearance. Katie's bank account showed no activity after Friday evening. Her social media accounts remained dormant. Her email hadn't been accessed. Detective Murphy began constructing a timeline. The investigation focused initially on Katie's personal life. Beth described her roommate as reliable, organized, and devoted to Sophie Miller. Katie's parents lived in Sacramento and spoke with her regularly by phone. The last conversation occurred on Wednesday, November 17th. Nothing unusual was reported. Katie had a boyfriend named Logan Parker. He was infamous for his drinking tantrums all around the town, but Katie still saw something in him that others did not. Katie and Logan had been together for 3 years and were in an unusually calm relationship since Katie started as a caregiver at the Millers. Automatically, Logan was put on the top suspects list. Detective Murphy proceeded to interview Clare Miller, too, on November 23rd at the family's West Lincoln Avenue home. Claire appeared distraught as she explained that Katie had been an exemplary caregiver, and Sophie was heartbroken by her sudden absence. She continued to say that the family couldn't understand what might have happened. When asked about Katie's final day working for them, Claire stated that Katie left at around 7 p.m. after covering an extra hour while Claire finished some work calls. Everything seemed perfectly normal. Paul Miller corroborated this account. He'd been home briefly Friday evening, but left again around 7:45 to pick up takeout for dinner. He returned at 8:20 to find Claire and Sophie having a quiet evening at home. Both parents permitted Detective Murphy to review their home security footage, which seemed to support their timeline. The Ring doorbell showed Katie leaving at 7:17 p.m., walking to her car, and driving away. No additional vehicles were visible on the street, and no suspicious activity was captured. Katie's phone records showed her last location ping at the Fred Meyer parking lot at 8:47 p.m. Friday. She'd sent a text message at 8:41 p.m. to Beth, saying she needed to think about some things and would be home late. The message did not seem out of character because Katie typically went off alone for peace, often for her issues with Logan. Investigators canvassed the grocery store area. No employees could provide any significant leads on Katie, and the parking lot cameras had been out of use for a long time. However, the grocery store security camera captured Katie pushing a cart towards the exit. She checked her phone twice and didn't look back. What happened after she walked through those doors was never recorded. Detective Murphy requested access to the Miller family's full security system archives. Claire provided login credentials without hesitation. The detective spent 2 days reviewing footage from the week preceding Katie's disappearance. What he observed was routine childcare. Katie arrived punctually, engaged Sophie in age-appropriate activities, maintained the household, and departed after Claire returned from work. The only anomaly that appeared in that was the Friday evening kitchen conversation between Claire and Katie, the one captured at 7:13 p.m. Without audio, the content remained unknown. The first major setback occurred on November 29th, when a woman matching Katie's description was reportedly seen at a coffee shop in Tacoma, Washington, roughly 160 miles southeast of Yakima. The witness seemed certain. Detective Murphy contacted Tacoma police, who located the woman within hours. She was not Katie Fairmont. The false lead consumed 3 critical days of investigative resources, and the investigation began to go cold. Meanwhile, forensic analysis of Katie's car yielded minimal evidence. Her fingerprints were there throughout the vehicle, as expected. Trace evidence from the car's interior matched materials from the Miller house. Sophie's blonde hair on the passenger seat, mud consistent with the Millers' backyard on the floor mats. Nothing suggested a struggle. The vehicle appeared to have been parked deliberately, locked properly, with no signs of forced entry or hurried exit. All that was left now was Logan Parker, Katie's boyfriend. Logan did not have a strong alibi to support his statements of that evening, which put him in a more difficult spot. However, Logan and Katie's bipolar form of relationship did support Detective Aaron's suspicion of his involvement in Katie Fairmont's disappearance. Once Logan was put under tight investigation, he revealed that he had been seeing a woman behind Katie who could vouch for him for that evening. The police recorded the woman's statement, but Logan was still under suspicion. With no more loose ends for now, Detective Murphy returned to the security footage with a fresh perspective. He'd initially accepted the timeline as presented. Katie left the Miller house at 7:17 p.m. and was later seen via phone records at the Fred Meyer lot around 8:47 p.m. 40 minutes of drive time seemed appropriate given Friday evening traffic, but something about Paul Miller's demeanor during their interview nagged at him. He spoke almost nothing while Claire did all the talking. There were several possible explanations for this behavior, which put Detective Aaron in a tight spot. He began reviewing footage frame by frame, expanding his search beyond the immediate Friday timeline. The interior cameras captured thousands of hours of interaction between Clare and Katie over the previous 3 months. Detective Murphy brought in Officer Melissa Chen, who specialized in behavioral analysis. Together, they watched Clare and Paul watching Katie throughout October and early November. The pattern shifted suspicions. Clare Miller was obsessed with documenting Katie's relationship with Sophie. The cameras weren't positioned for security, they were angled specifically to capture the babysitter's interactions with the child. Clare had saved hundreds of motion alert clips featuring Katie. The cloud storage showed that Clare accessed these clips repeatedly, sometimes reviewing the same footage 15 or 20 times. She'd created folders organized by date, activity type, and Sophie's mood indicators. This isn't normal parental monitoring, Officer Chen noted during their December 1st review session. Paul probably knows close to zero about whatever happens at home during the day. That explained his near silence during questioning. Detective Murphy requested additional records. Clare's vehicle had an integrated GPS through her car insurance provider. He obtained a warrant for the data on December 2nd. The results contradicted Clare's statement entirely. According to GPS records, Clare's Lexus SUV left the West Lincoln Avenue address at 7:19 p.m. on November 19th, 2 minutes after Katie's documented departure. However, there was no such sign of departure captured in the doorbell camera. Either way, two technical devices contradicted each other. The vehicle traveled along West Nob Hill, entering the Fred Meyer parking lot at 7:34 p.m. It remained stationary for 17 minutes before departing at 7:51 p.m. The SUV returned to West Lincoln Avenue at 8:09 p.m. Clare had followed Katie. Detective Murphy confronted Clare Miller on December 3rd at Yakima Police Headquarters. Paul Miller accompanied his wife, but was separated for individual questioning. Without the supportive presence of her husband, Clare's composure fractured. When presented with the GPS data, she initially denied following Katie. Then she claimed she'd only wanted to ensure the babysitter arrived home safely. Finally, she admitted to confronting Katie a second time that evening. The kitchen conversation captured on camera had been an ultimatum. Clare told Katie that Sophie was becoming too attached, that the babysitter needed to maintain more professional distance, and that Clare felt Katie was overstepping boundaries by allowing Sophie to prefer her company. Katie had been shocked. She explained that she was simply doing her job, that healthy attachment to caregivers was developmentally normal, and that she would never intentionally undermine Clare's relationship with her daughter. The conversation ended badly. Clare told Katie not to return on Monday. Katie, hurt and confused, gathered her belongings and left. But Clare, watching through the Ring camera on her phone from inside the house, saw Katie sit in her car for several minutes, visibly upset. When Katie finally drove away, Clare made a decision. She would follow, would explain herself better, would apologize for her harsh words. This was what Clare told Detective Murphy on December 3rd. She followed Katie to Fred Meyer. She approached Katie's Elantra in the parking lot. They talked through the driver's window for a few minutes. Clare apologized. Katie accepted. They agreed to discuss the situation more calmly the following week. Then Clare left, and Katie remained in the parking lot, presumably to decompose before driving home. This story explained the GPS data. It did not explain Katie's disappearance, nor the contradiction that the doorbell cameras produced. Her decision to conceal this important information had already put Clare in a tough spot in the investigation. Furthermore, Clare had it made difficult when the timeline didn't align with the phone records. Katie's final text to Beth occurred at 8:41 p.m., nearly an hour after Clare claimed to have left the Fred Meyer lot. More critically, Clare's vehicle GPS showed the SUV stationary in the parking lot for 17 minutes, an unusually long duration for a brief apology through a car window. The second setback occurred when Beth Park, Katie's roommate, recanted a previous statement. Initially, Beth had described Katie as happy with the Miller family position. On December 5th, Beth contacted Detective Murphy to clarify that Katie had recently mentioned tension with Clare. Specifically, Katie told Beth that Clare had become weird about Sophie's affection, that Clare would interrupt activities to insert herself, and that Clare had started critiquing Katie's childcare choices in increasingly hostile ways. Katie planned to find a new position after the holidays. Seemingly, Katie had been documenting her interactions in a day in a journal app on her mobile phone. Investigators unlocked and accessed the journal in Katie's mobile phone on December 6th. The part of the entries from November detailed escalating friction. November 10th. Just the look of Claire makes me uncomfortable these days. She watched the camera footage of Sophie's birthday celebration 3 times while I was still there. Even asked me why I'd given Sophie an extra cupcake without asking permission first. November 15th. Claire accused me of encouraging Sophie to call me Kat instead of Miss Katie. I never encouraged this. Sophie just started saying it on her own. November 18th. Today, Claire mentioned that parents can't be replaced. The way she said it felt threatening. The journal contained no entry for November 19th. Detective Murphy obtained a second warrant for more comprehensive data from Claire's phone and vehicle. The breakthrough came on December 8th when digital forensics checked text messages from Claire's device. At 7:57 p.m. on November 19th, the same minute her SUV departed the Fred Meyer parking lot. According to GPS, Claire had texted Paul, "Handled the babysitter situation. Won't be a problem anymore." Paul Miller, when shown this message during a follow-up interview, appeared genuinely confused. He'd assumed Claire meant she'd fired Katie or reached some professional resolution. He never imagined his wife had done anything violent. His shock seemed authentic. Further investigation cleared him of any involvement. The case remained frustratingly incomplete. Claire had followed Katie. Claire had confronted Katie. Claire's vehicle was present at the location where Katie was last known to be alive. Claire had sent a cryptic message suggesting a permanent resolution, but without Katie's body or direct evidence of harm, prosecutors hesitated to file charges. The decisive break occurred on December 15th, when a utility worker conducting routine maintenance near the Springwater Corridor Trail discovered a canvas tote bag partially buried in brush, approximately 2 miles from the Fred Meyer parking lot. The bag contained Katie's CPR certification card, a children's book, a set of Sophie Miller's artwork, and some marks that resembled the closest to blood. Forensic examination of the bag revealed soil composition matching an area near the Yakima River Greenway, southeast of the Miller residence. Cadaver dogs were deployed to the refuge on December 16th. Within 3 hours, handlers located disturbed earth beneath a dense thicket of blackberry bushes, roughly 30 feet from the main trail. The excavation revealed Katie Fairmont's body, wrapped in a blue tarp and buried in a shallow grave. The medical examiner determined the cause of death as asphyxiation. Bruising patterns on Katie's neck suggested manual strangulation. The time of death was estimated at approximately 8 p.m. on November 19th, consistent with the timeline investigators had constructed. Additional forensic analysis had almost connected Claire Miller definitively to the crime when the fresh cigarette burns were pointed out on Katie's arms. Claire didn't smoke, nor did Paul. Consequently, Logan was brought to the investigation once again. What vouched for Claire were the fibers from the blue tarp found on Katie's clothes, which matched a tarp stored in the Miller family's garage. Purchased from a local hardware store on November 18th using Claire's credit card, soil samples from Claire's SUV trunk matched the specific composition found at the burial site. The last knot was the hair strands found clutched tight in Katie's fist and around her wrist in her bangles. Katie had fought Claire. Claire Miller was arrested on December 21st, 2021, at her West Lincoln Avenue home, almost a month after Katie Fairmont's disappearance. Sophie was present when the police arrived. The child, not yet 4 years old, asked officers if they knew where Kat was. Paul Miller, devastated and bewildered, assumed temporary custody of his daughter, while Claire was transported to the Yakima County Corrections Facility. During interrogation, Claire initially maintained her innocence, but when presented with physical evidence, she requested an attorney. Her defense team argued that the evidence was circumstantial, that the hair strands could have been stuck to Katie's bangles during innocent contact earlier in the day, and that Claire had no history of violence. The prosecution countered with the security footage demonstrating Claire's obsessive monitoring, the GPS data proving Claire's presence at multiple crime-related locations, and the text message indicating premeditation. The trial began on April 4th, 2022. Prosecutors presented a methodical case. They established Claire's jealousy through testimony from Beth Park and entries from Katie's journal. They demonstrated premeditation through the tarp purchase on November 18th and the confrontational kitchen conversation on November 19th. They proved the opportunity through GPS data showing that Clare had followed Katie to Fred Meyer. They connected Clare to the murder through DNA evidence, fiber matches, and soil analysis. The trial also revealed the reason behind the contradiction in GPS location of Clare's car and the doorbell camera footage that evening. Apparently, Clare had edited the footage of that specific timestamp to play the same clip when Clare's car was already parked in the driveway, again and again, while originally the car was not in its place, but near the grocery store's parking lot. This revelation specifically added Clare to a tougher spot, as there were no reasons that the defense could defend this with. The defense attempted to introduce reasonable doubt by questioning the reliability of GPS data and suggesting alternative suspects. They portrayed Clare as a devoted mother concerned about her daughter's well-being, not a jealous woman capable of murder. They argued that the hair strands could have transferred innocently, that Clare's purchase of a tarp didn't prove murderous intent, and that correlation wasn't causation. The prosecution's closing argument focused on the security footage. They played clips of Clare obsessively reviewing recordings of Katie and Sophie. They highlighted Clare's text message to Paul. They walked the jury through the timeline, minute by minute, demonstrating that every piece of evidence pointed toward a single conclusion. Clare Miller had strangled Katie Fairmont in the Fred Meyer parking lot, driven the body to Yakima River Greenway, and buried it to eliminate the woman her daughter loved. The cigarette burns on Katie's arms, however, introduced the court to another suspect, Logan Parker, who was brought in after he attempted to flee the state. However, with no crucial evidence to link him to Katie's murder, Logan was only convicted of abuse of Katie during their relationship, including that on 19 November 2021. Evidence of abuse was substantial, as well as clear with the testimony of Beth Park, Katie's roommate and friend. Logan Parker was sentenced to 5 years in prison. The jury deliberated for 11 hours over 2 days. On April 22, 2022, they returned a verdict of guilty on charges of first-degree murder. However, Clare Miller showed no visible reaction when the verdict was read. Sentencing occurred on June 10, 2022. Katie's parents addressed the court, describing their daughter's passion for childcare, her kindness toward the children in her care, and her dreams of eventually opening her own daycare center. They asked the judge to impose the maximum sentence. However, Clare Miller received only 13 years in jail without the possibility of parole. They asked the judge to impose the maximum sentence. They asked the possibility of parole. By the following winter, nobody in the neighborhood remembered Katie's name correctly. It became that babysitter case, then simply that thing that happened. New families moved into the block. Different curtains, different cars, different children riding bikes where police tape once fluttered. Sophie grew taller than the kitchen counter. She learned to pack her own lunch. Eventually, she stopped mentioning her mother altogether. The house on West Lincoln Avenue sold quickly as Paul moved away, along with his daughter, to start anew, while Sophie was still young enough to feel pain fully. Katie's family planted small trees near their house, not as a memorial anyone would visit, but because Katie once said she liked how trees didn't rush to grow. That eventually grew into a small garden and a token of memory of Katie Fairmont.